looks to me, Nick, like he's saying some goodbyes here as he walks over toward the Atlanta bench.
Hey, what's going on, you ball lovers? It's Brody with Couch Potato Hoops, bringing you another video. Today, I have 5 moves the Wizards need to make in order to be competitive, even in a lackluster East.
Got it! A three-pointer for Trae!
Alright, now, before we get in the video, I would love to hear what moves you think the Washington Wizards should make, whether it's a trade, a coaching decision, or anything like that. Just join me in the comments below, and I'll meet y'all there. With that said, let's get into the video! Alright, so the first one's kind of obvious. It's just be bad and draft good. Obviously, the Wizards are one of the bottom teams in the East, and this year just doesn't seem like a year that they should be contending for anything other than a top pick. Now, obviously, the goal would be a top 5 pick, but really, all throughout the lottery, there are some really interesting players that I think would be great alongside Trae Young, alongside Alexander Sarr, and as a part of this Wizards rebuild / retool around Trae Young, whatever you want to call it, really. Obviously, some of the top names are one of the Boozer twins, Cameron Boozer, I believe. Cameron Boozer, he's like a super athletic, strong power forward, really solid rebounder, and I think he projects to be a good defender just because like he is stocky and strong. And I've just seen a lot of really physical finishes from a guy like him, and I think Trae Young would make a guy with his skill set just have an easy transition to the NBA. Another name would be AJ Debinca. AJ Debinca just seems like a phenomenal shot creator. He would be a guy that when Trae Young isn't running and initiating the offense, would be able to take some of that load off. I think even as a rookie, he looks like an extremely talented shot creator. He can create in the mid-range, the post. And I'm sure a lot of that's going to translate to 3 and stuff like that. He's also a very athletic wing, so adding athletic wings next to Trae Young, it's usually a recipe for success. Finally, there's a guy, it is who I thought. It's this, he's a two-way prospect, Caleb Wilson. He's like a 6'10 guard, basically, but he's so physical and dominant. A lot of people compare him to Kevin Garnett, which, oddly enough, Alex Sarr, coming into the draft, that's kind of who I pegged him as, was a guy that he'd be a great defender, he'd be able to do some interesting stuff in the post, stretch out to the 3, and I thought, a peak Alex Sarr would be similar to a Kevin Garnett style of guy. With that said, getting another guy with that skill set, another defensive forward, I think they would end up being one of the best defensive front courts in the entire NBA. And considering having Trae Young on your team, you need a front court that's going to clean up a lot of mistakes and be extremely dominant on the defensive end. Speaking on the defensive end, my next point is they need to go out there and get defensive wings and defensive guards. Obviously, you don't want to get trapped into building around Trae Young just as the Atlanta Hawks did. There's a clear ceiling with Trae Young teams. So, although you do need defensive wings and guards, your whole goal should not be let's heliocentric Trae ball our offense and just whatever happens out of that is what we get. But you need competent defensive wings. There are a lot of guys out on the market right now. There are two-way guys such as Trey Murphy. There's his teammate Herb Jones. Ayo Dosunmu would fit phenomenal next to Trae Young. I don't think the Chicago Bulls want to let him go, but Ayo Dosunmu would be so great. So yeah, I would say get a couple of 6'5" guys that are like that, but then you also do need that 6'7", 6'8". Even Patrick Williams. Patrick Williams has been somewhat disappointing in his NBA career, but he's been a 40% three-point shooter and a really solid defender. So I think we do need to give him his flowers for that. The floor of their defense is going to be determined by that front court, and the ceiling of their defense is going to be determined by what perimeter defenders they can get that can guard the best players on other teams at a high level. Next point, we've got coaching. I think that, what's his name? Brian Keefe. There we go. My gosh. Brian Keefe, I think that he does have potential to be an interesting coach, but he does seem to be a guy that was an assistant coach for a reason. He seems to be a guy that was more of like a hype man, like, oh, come on, we can do this. And he was brought in because he was a player development coach, you know? And I think player development coaches are necessary, but I also don't think that should be your head coach. Your head coach needs to have the X's and O's background in order to make things happen. I don't know much about Brian Keefe, so I can't speak on that side of his game. But personally, I feel like it would be a lot more interesting and exciting if they went and got like a college coach, tried to find a guy that is interested in training up a lot of these young guys, implementing a structure and a system that can allow Trae Young to flourish, but then can also allow the team around Trae Young to flourish independent of him. Make sure there is valuable offense outside of Trae Young. Trae Young and Alexander Sarr, they're going to have such a phenomenal two-man game. Their pick and roll is going to be lethal. If you look at Alex Sarr's catch radius, you look at Trae Young's Chris Paul level playmaking, I think that there is something special there. But you can't just win off of that. You're going to beat the bad teams with that. But the exceptional teams, the elite teams, you need something else. You need quality offense outside of that. Right now, with a lot of the young guys that they have, Trae Johnson he's a 6'5" shot creator, amazing three-point shooter, really impressive player, and a player that I love to watch. I also love that, like, CJ McCollum, I think, said this. He was like,
24 hours in a day, so you got to find some hobbies.
Like, we need to get him some hobbies outside of basketball. But I'm like, I want a guy obsessed with basketball playing on my basketball team, man. And I understand CJ, he's a great vet. He helps people think outside of just the basketball of it all. Think about your life. Think about your future. Think about your community. You know, I love that about CJ. But it's also like, let's be obsessed about basketball. Like, this young guy has a great opportunity to go out there and make whatever he wants of his career. Like, I love that. All right, so my final point in all of this is kind of taking a page out of Oklahoma City's book, finding a center with some size. Obviously, your front court might get a little bit busy with the draft coming up. If you don't end up getting AJ Debinsa, it could be a couple of front court mates that are more like power forward type guys. But I think getting a center with some size, getting a more traditional big would be unbelievably valuable for this team. I think it offers a lot of stability and rebounding when you have a sturdy force down there. I think it also can offer some like dynamic and strong interior offense. And just having somebody there whose job it is to control down low, guard those big guys on the other end, especially when most extremely competitive teams, New York has Karl Anthony Towns. That guy can get down and bruise. There's Nikola Jokic on the Denver Nuggets. There's Joel Embiid. There's Joel Embiid, who is like seriously having this resurgence as of late. He's looking a lot better. And he's way less needed than he ever was before. So now he's just a dynamic force down low that they can go to whenever. Whenever they need a bailout, Joel's down there and he's dominant. Now, with that said, I personally think that the answer is over in the West. I think they need to enter the Zubac sweepstakes. Zubac is going to be one of the more valuable guys out there on the market, especially as far as centers go. There are people that, the Pacers are a team that Zubac could go to. Then we've also got the Celtics are in need of a serious starting center. And I really think the Wizards should throw their hat into that ring. I think that they have the assets. I don't think it would even take that much out of what they have in order to get him. And they would also potentially have one of the best packages in order to get Zubac. You know, if they could just copy OKC in that era, having a lot of different dynamic lineups in order to confront a lot of different dynamic teams, they could be in contention over the next 2 to 3 years. They could be a serious and dangerous playoff team. All right, so with that said, I had so much fun talking with y'all today. If you enjoyed this video, enjoy this style of content, go down below, drop a like, subscribe, and I'll meet you down below in the comments. Have a good one. Peace.